What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck On3, coming to you on Friday, January 31st, 2025. Got a recruiting centered episode for you guys. I know how much you guys like hearing about the Oregon football recruiting and the latest around Dan landing the Ducks on the trail. Joining me, as always, is ScoopDuck owner and publisher, Justin Hopkins. J-Hop, how we doing?
Yeah, doing great. Just rocking and rolling, and really excited about all the content you and I have been able to produce. And it's, again, we say it all the time, but it's nice to have stuff to write about. You know, coaches are on the road, guys were in town last weekend, and makes our lives and jobs a lot easier.
It certainly does. We have been absolutely ripping through content. I've been doing a ton of interviews. You've been getting updates, and we have that super awesome and engaged message board. That's why you guys want to be at scoopduck.com. No better place for Oregon football and recruiting. And it's a great time right now because the Ducks just had a massive junior day visit weekend. I had a bunch of stuff on the site and then, of course, a podcast. Wanted to just real quick plug our last podcast. You guys are hearing this on Friday. We got to be joined by former Oregon kicker Camden Lewis to get some really cool insights and stories from his time as a kicker at the U of O. And, of course, kind of what he's doing now post-football, post-Oregon days. So make sure to give that one a listen. Watch it on the ScoopDuck On3 YouTube channel. It was one of my favorite episodes that we've done in a little bit here. So, Justin, we got some news to get into, but not anything concrete has happened, I guess you could say. But you and I have been making some predictions coming out of a big weekend for Oregon. And we have some predictions that we're going to get into here in the 2026 class. So why don't we just start off with one of the biggest names on Oregon's board here in 2026, and that is Orange Lutheran linebacker Talanoa Ely. You and I both put a prediction in yesterday for the Ducks to land the coveted linebacker out of Southern California, out of the Trinity League. And oh boy, this guy would be a huge piece to Oregon's 2026 class.
Yeah, huge piece is an understatement. I mean, this guy's an animal. Everything you kind of look for in a linebacker. He's got the prototypical size. Obviously, state of California. So, you know, what that does is that gives you a guy on the West Coast. I just feel good about the West Coast guys. And I say that, Oregon can recruit nationally. We know that. But, let's be real. In the day of the transfer portal, I always feel a little bit better about these guys that are maybe a little bit closer regionally that, probably aren't going to get homesick and things that can potentially come up. So those to me are things that I see as a value. And then, of course, you're keeping him away from USC. You're keeping him away from other programs in your region. So big time guy. I like that, you and I basically made our predictions separate of each other because I know, as you know, I text you. I was like, hey, I was about to make a Talanoa prediction, but I see you just did like, an hour ago, whatever. You're like, oh, yeah. So it's just kind of funny because I hadn't noticed it till I popped on his profile and be like, oh, there is a pick on there. But yeah, it makes me feel good to see that, we've kind of got two different angles on it, both kind of coming to the same conclusion. I don't think you or I believe that Talanoa is committing tomorrow or today or this weekend, but we feel like Oregon's in a great spot. Oregon's probably the team to beat. And, I think what we're going to see overall, not just with Talanoa, but with some of these guys, is that get them on campus again, maybe March, April, whatever the case might be. And I think we'll see things maybe kind of start to, ramp up a little bit for Oregon in terms of commitments. But right now they're doing everything. Like, again, we said it on here, kind of before anywhere else, just that, hey, these are foundation weekends. This is where you're laying the foundation and you're going to build on top of that during the spring. So I think, Dan Lanning and Marshall Malco have done that as good as anyone.
And it's important to keep in mind here, of course, that the Ducks already have 10 guys in the fold. So it's not like they're starting from scratch and they need to get commitments. And Oregon's certainly not been the program that operates in a way where they're just taking commitments to generate momentum. I think you see that maybe more so if there's a coaching change and someone new comes in and you just want to get some buzz and some momentum around the program. But that's certainly not the case for Oregon. And Talanoa Ely is a guy that they have been very high on for a long time. No shortage of competition for him. He's got offers from all over the country. And he told me that he's probably looking to commit around sometime in the fall, like during one of his bye weeks. So I think there's still quite a bit of runway to go in this recruitment, but I feel very confident after talking to him before and after his last visit And speaking with some sources as well, that Oregon's in a really good spot here at the top. And he told me that they were at the top of his list. So that certainly helps the confidence as well. He'll go to UCLA, I think, as soon as today. And I guess, well, today's Thursday, but we're doubling up here on Thursday. So this is coming out on Friday, but he's going to be at UCLA and then USC as well before things go dead on the recruiting trail in the month of February. So feel really good about this pick. I guess the one last thing I'll add here on Talanoa is that he's listed as a linebacker, but Oregon primarily sees him as an edge, kind of in a role like Tatum Tuioti, play on the edge and then get him out in space a little bit as well. 6'3", 220-pound range, but he's a really versatile guy, and I think that getting a guy like him in the fold would certainly strengthen your California ties, and the Ducks have been all over SoCal and California as a whole. Tristan Phillips, Dutch Horsk, Cody Green, Tamuhini Tapui, all those guys are from the state of California, and Oregon's going to make sure that they're top contenders for all those top guys.
Yeah, and what is that? That's a foundation, right? You've set a foundation for those California guys. But hey, look, you probably know this guy or play with this guy or whatever the case might be. By the way, he's committed to us. And on the heels of what you said about Talanoa, I firmly believe that right now he probably thinks maybe he wants to make a decision in the fall. I'd be really shocked if he's uncommitted in July. And I don't mean that at Oregon specifically. We just both know that these guys, guys like Talanoa and others, they end up taking those visits in June, those official visits, which is now a critical period in recruiting, and kind of come out of it like, hey, it'd be nice to, not be worried about this going into my senior year. So while he says maybe in the fall, I could see this guy being, a spring, summer decision, and wouldn't surprise me in the least bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see the timeline kind of get accelerated with those visits. Of course, I would definitely think he'd be back on campus in the spring. The other pick that I had made somewhat recently was for 2027 athlete Honor Falave Johnson. So I already spoke about that one on a previous episode of the podcast. I don't want to bring that one up again. But Justin, you made another pick on Tuesday as part of our Prediction Tuesday feature. My Talanoa pick was in the 3-2-1, which is a weekly Wednesday feature for the most part on ScoopDuck. I try to stay diligent with the scheduling, with the timing. But how about we talk about your other pick that you made over on the site this week?
Yeah, I made an Honor pick as well as you. So both of us have a pick with Honor. And I think, that one just really feels like a matter of when, not if. So as far as that goes, I don't think anyone's recruited him harder than Oregon in the early stages. And I think his positional flexibility there, it's a guy that could play running back or could play safety. I think that adds a lot more value to him as well. So I think that's one that the Ducks are pretty happy about, putting so much effort into. Nehemiah Talanoa is the other one that I've made my pick on. And, the defensive tackle, defensive lineman out of De La Salle, he spoke very highly about his relationship with Matthew Johnson, whom Oregon has signed and is already on campus now. So Nehemiah was part of that big group that visited for Oregon's Junior Day, and they were able to, spend some time together and talk about just kind of, Eugene so far. I think he went so far to say is, that's my brother right there. That's a guy I'm really close to. So, again, another guy that Oregon's put a lot of early resources into. And we're just looking, we're looking at a really big defensive line class for Oregon. Lanning did it a couple years ago, and I think we're in line to kind of see a lot of those guys, come into play this year for Oregon, whether it's Tion Gray or Amari Washington or Terrence Green, all part of a really big group Oregon signed together. They're going to do it again this year. 2026 is going to have 6, 7, 8 defensive linemen, whether they're an edge or an interior guy or even more of that stand-up role like we were just talking about a minute ago for Talanoa. So you could certainly see that what I think Oregon's got 4 or 5 defensive linemen committed already. I don't think there's any reason why they wouldn't take another 3 or 4. And again, Talanoa, just like we were talking about, you're getting a guy from the western footprint. You're getting a guy from, the NorCal area, which again, that's even closer to Eugene than SoCal. So you feel good or better about the transfer chances. And then again, you keep them away from Cal, you keep them away from USC, Washington, and others, and continue to add depth on your defensive line. So would be a really big get. This is a guy I just wonder if he'll end up taking multiple official visits in June. or if he'll be committed by then. He's a guy I could see, maybe making a spring or early summer decision potentially. He hasn't given a specific time, but I could see that being a possibility here.
And Talanoa is a recruit that doesn't necessarily have a ton of pop from an offer sheet perspective. I think the other biggest offer that he has on the table right now is probably Auburn, but Arizona is a more recent offer for him. So I think he'll probably have a majority of the West Coast on his radar here. But I think for the most part, based on what I've gathered about this recruitment, it kind of feels like Oregon has maybe found a bit of a gem here, because he's not the highest rated guy that you're going to find. And that the tape, if you're watching it here on the ScoopDuck YouTube channel, I think is really impressive. I think the power that he plays with, the motor that he has, certainly is a violent guy that is just more than willing to throw his body around. But all that said, I think that the general consensus around him is that he's fairly raw, which I think you just have to be excited about if you're a Duck fan and you're operating on the expectation that he ends up at Oregon, because a lot of these guys can just really turn into some phenomenal players. I think that Jordan Birch obviously is a good example, because didn't quite feel like the staff was getting the most out of him at South Carolina. He comes to Eugene and just really finds that next level to his game. But if you're looking at a high school recruit, maybe you're looking at Amari Washington, and someone who has really kind of just gone through the process and looks like he's going to be in line to be Oregon's next dominant force on the defensive line. Mateo Uyunglele as well, but he was already kind of a blue chip, really high end guy coming into Oregon. But this prediction, I need to make mine, because I think I'm definitely going to make one to join you there, Justin. It in a way, it kind of feels like a layup because of the Tosh Lapointe connection. We know, of course, that he went to De La Salle and played his high school ball there as well. Oregon has that momentum at that very school with a guy like Matt Johnson, who just got to Eugene. And I'm excited to see who they add at the defensive line spot, Justin, because you mentioned they already have a number of impressive names in the fold, but they're still going after some really, really impressive talent. So I think it makes sense, because we know Dan Lanning loves defensive linemen, and we know that they went pretty light at the position in 2025. So kind of it checks and balances. The scales are going to balance out here, but these two additions, if the Ducks are able to get them, would be really key pieces in the 26th cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, you look at that group that Oregon signed a couple years back and is about to be, really an integral part of this team this year. You go and get the 26 guys like this, and yeah, they're going to come in next year, when a lot of those guys are there for their third year or whatever, and get the opportunity to be developed for a year behind them, and then be right where this group is at right now. You know what I mean? So again, I think we have to kind of stop looking at recruiting the way they're stacking classes. It's not so much a year in and year out. It's almost like a 2-year kind of projection. If you're Oregon, at least with the way they've recruited. Now, other schools that maybe haven't recruited as well, they're looking for a little bit more plug and play. They're not necessarily at that stacking type of position that Oregon is. And Oregon's not there at every position, right? I mean, I think they're kind of laying the foundation now with defensive backs with the group they just signed. Got to do it again in 26 to kind of get that started. But, I think you're seeing some of that laid elsewhere. It was already there at defensive line. Need to do a little bit of offensive line and receiver and defensive back. But, we know Dan Lanning will get there. He just wants to win games and try to compete for a national championship. So, that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, you have to love what you're seeing on the recruiting trail at Oregon and just stacking classes. I think that's really the biggest element that I think, Justin, gets kind of lost in the shuffle when things end the way they did in the Rose Bowl, and everyone's got something to say about Lanning or some kind of criticism about the offense or the defense. But just looking at where Oregon can grow and what they have coming down the line is really exciting for guys like you and I that have covered a lot of recruiting. So I'm super excited, and going to be fun to see some of these guys hit the field next year and spring ball maybe coming in the next couple months here and into 2025. So a lot of good stuff coming.
Yeah, this is probably one of the spring balls I'm most excited for, and it's because of all that infusion of new talent and, new guys at new positions. It's going to be a different team. It's, you lost a lot of guys to the NFL or just out of eligibility. And I'm excited. Like, this is, to me, is like fun because it's not just, okay, we got to learn all the new guys that just showed up because they're transfers. You're going to have a couple freshmen that make a big impact, but you're going to have those guys that have been here for 2 or 3 years now that are really going to be, the base of this program. So to me, like Dante Moore, he's been here a couple of years now. I know he didn't start at Oregon, but now it's going to be it's exciting than saying, oh, who's the next quarterback that's just coming in? So I get it. I'm not beating on Dan Lanning for using the transfer portal. I'm glad he does it because Oregon's winning and others aren't. But it is kind of fun to have these guys that have been around for a couple of years now.
It is a little bit of uncertainty, but in an exciting way. Some new blood, if you will, with some of these guys that have been on the team for a while. So can't wait to cover it and watch it. That's gonna do it for us today. A little bit of a shorter episode, kind of in and out, just giving you guys some of our thoughts on the recruiting predictions that we made. Happy to report no cavities at the dentist today, completely unrelated, but just wanted you guys to know that important news here on this podcast. But if you want to find more of Justin, you can follow him on anything, mostly Twitter/X at JHopkinsSD. You can find me anywhere at mtorresports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck On3 YouTube channel and come and see us at ScoopDuck.com for the best in Oregon football and recruiting. And we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.